Hello everyone, and welcome back to Between the Clouds, where we explore everything from home labs to hybrid cloud, all through the lens of hands-on experimentation. I'm your host, Brandon Lee, and this is episode 2. Today we're diving into some of the latest news and topics, including the release of VMware Cloud Foundation 9.0. We're also going to dive into some really cool tools that I have been playing around with and experimenting with in the home lab, including a tool called CoreControl, as well as another really cool tool called Docker Rollout. And there's finally another tool I would like to talk to you guys about and highlight called ProxMenux. It's one I've written about on my blog, as well as I've created a YouTube video and uploaded that recently covering this really cool tool and lots of excitement around it. Those that are downloading it are really excited about the features and functionality that it provides for your Proxmox VE server. So let's dive right into it. Our first topic is VMware Cloud Foundation 9.0. VCF 9.0 has officially dropped, and it's a major release for private cloud and this new VMware by Broadcom solution. Now, I'm going to digress just for a moment before we get into the topic of VCF 9.0 at hand. I think, and I have seen the enthusiasm and the community involvement and really excitement, I would say, around VMware has definitely cooled off. I know in the circles that I am personally in, many are looking at alternatives to VMware. Now, does this make VMware a bad product? Absolutely not. I think it is still the best hypervisor out there, hands down. Nothing else can really touch VMware in terms of features and capabilities. However, since the buyout by Broadcom of VMware, the price hikes, the licensing changes, I think many are exploring alternatives and looking at hypervisors that may not be able to do as much, but I think many organizations as well as even home labbers are coming to the realization that they don't really need all of the features provided by VMware. Now, again, I digress from our main topic here, but just wanted to include that as a note for VMware Cloud Foundation, as I think many are still interested in the stack and the solution. However, all of those changes have definitely dampened that enthusiasm. Now, what does VMware Cloud Foundation 9.0, VCF 9.0, what are the new features that are included in this really major release of the solution? Well, some of the highlights include the NVMe Memory Tiering is now fully supported. I've written about this, I've created blog posts about it. It's something that I was really excited about when I first saw this feature in vSphere 8.0 Update 3. And if you recall, NVMe Memory Tiering allows you to offload system memory and create a tier of memory that resides inside of NVMe storage that you have locally installed in your vSphere host, your ESXi host. Now, what that allows you to do is to definitely extend the amount of memory, also extend really the number of workloads and resources that you can run on an ESXi host. And I think this is a tremendously awesome feature, especially for home labs when we are using many PCs and other devices that RAM is specifically the one area where we run into limitations. Now, just recently in the past few months, I've written about this as well, created videos on the topic, but we do now at least have DDR5 memory in 64 gig modules. So that means that many PCs can now be effectively bumped up to that 128 gig limit, now surpassing the previous configuration maximum of 96 gigs. So as you would think, that would dramatically lower a server's total cost of ownership. I know if you're like me and you work in the enterprise space as well as private cloud, when you look at system memory, that is absolutely one of the most expensive components when you go to build a brand new Dell server, PowerEdge server, or HP, or one of the other vendors out there. System memory is definitely one of the most expensive components. So if you can install NVMe storage in these ESXi hosts, you can effectively turn on this NVMe memory tiering. I've documented those steps. It's 5 or 6 steps to turn on the feature, reboot the host, and you effectively can double, triple, or even quadruple 400% your system memory and offloading that to NVMe storage. So really cool to see this in a fully supported production release. In 8.0 Update 3, NVMe Memory Tiering was referred to as a technical preview, and there were some limitations that I specifically stumbled onto with testing this in the lab. For instance, you cannot create snapshots that include system memory. So when you go in and the default is selected to include system memory for a virtual machine that you are creating a snapshot for, you will get an error when you try to do that with NVMe Memory Tiering on. I also ran into some obscure limitations with storage vMotion. If you try to storage vMotion VMs with a host that is enabled for NVMe Memory Tiering, you will also run into some errors there, limitations. So I haven't really seen the full details if VMware is still saying that there are limitations with NVMe Memory Tiering, but the fact that now it's listed as fully supported, I would imagine some of those limitations have since been rolled back. Now, also going into the next feature that I think is one of the major features that is being touted in VCF 9.0 is something called vSAN ESA Global Deduplication. And with this global deduplication, VMware describes it as delivering cross-cluster space savings and even potentially saving millions of dollars if you think about storage clusters that have multiple petabytes of storage. This global deduplication, they call it, with vSAN ESA is a further space savings capability. According to VMware, potentially 34% lower TCO with vSAN ESA with global dedupe turned on. So they are continuing to push the envelope when it comes to vSAN storage. And I will tell you, just running in the home lab, when I had vSAN running and all of my production, quote unquote, workloads running on vSAN in the home lab, I saw tremendous amount of deduplication when I went to the all flash configuration with vSAN. And it was amazing really what it can do, even with the parity information and the mirroring. If you have just 2 nodes or 3 that it's able to do. Very, very efficient platform. So I would imagine this is going to take things even further. There's something else called enhanced data path, which in this release, VMware mentions delivers up to 3x the throughput, lower latency. Of course, they are targeting and looking at the use case of AI and ML workloads. I think that's what every vendor is looking at these days. How can they improve their offering for AI and ML? So this enhanced data path is part of that solution with VCF that allows them to take things to the next level. There's also something called confidential computing support. You can keep data encrypted in process for higher compliance and security. And so this acts as a new layer of protection for sensitive workloads. And I think organizations, especially that are dealing with very strict compliance regulations or zero trust requirements that they need to meet as part of those compliance demands, I think this is going to be something that's interesting for them. Also, vMotion for GPU and AI virtual machines is much smoother. VMware has continue to work on GPU accelerated workloads and how those are able to be mobile between your ESXi hosts within a cluster. Also, something that is interesting as well when we think about this notion of private cloud, VMware has worked on multi-tenancy and VPC support that is now included with VCF 9.0. So I think this is going to be ideal for, of course, service providers or highly segmented private cloud environments where you want that very public cloud-like experience, multi-tenancy and VPC support, and be able to deliver that and do that in private cloud. Also, additional features that are worth mentioning are Kubernetes as a service via Tanzu, infrastructure as code integration, security ops dashboards, configuration drift detection, cost showback and chargeback, approved day 2 operations. And VMware by Broadcom has completely redesigned the VCF installer. So the installer for VCF looks completely different. So if you've gone through that, seen that, as well as the need for the Excel spreadsheet, VCF 9.0. It totally eliminates some of those very tedious tasks that you had to do bringing up a VCF cluster. So in short, VCF 9.0 moves this SDDC data center closer to what we think of as cloud-like and the agility that cloud really brings. So it's definitely worth, I think, if you are still interested in VMware and your organization is still running workloads in VMware vSphere, I think VCF 9.0 delivers some extremely worthwhile new capabilities and features that will definitely take things to the next level. So that's VCF 9.0 in a nutshell. Also, moving into our next topic, I wanted to share with everyone 3 tools that I have been working with in the home lab. The first one I want to mention is a tool called CoreControl. Now, CoreControl, if you've not heard about it, it's a very modern feeling home lab dashboard. So think something like Dashy or Homer or some of those other solutions, but it also integrates things that allow you to do much more within this particular solution than you can with some of the other standalone dashboards. CoreControl allows you to do a lot of monitoring that I think resembles some things that you could do with Uptime Kuma, as well as perhaps some Grafana setups and things that maybe you could do with something like a Linux tool like Cockpit. For instance, you can do real-time CPU, memory, disk, and network statistics. You've got service and container health monitoring. Also, the interface is extremely modern. I really think the developer has spent a lot of time and delivered a very clean and responsive UI in this solution. Also runs in a Docker container. So it's easy to stand up, easy for lifecycle management, easy to tweak, all of those things that we love about these Dockerized home lab solutions. And it's designed for a small scale rack or a cluster. So you can definitely grow your home lab with this tool as you add resources, applications, so on and so forth. It's got that modular feel and can scale as you need it to. And the deployment, as I mentioned, I deployed it in minutes just with a few lines of Docker Compose code. And one other thing I do want to mention about the solution is it's very active. I think the last Git commit was just a couple of weeks ago. I like these community-driven solutions that are active. You hate to find a tool that you really love and you look at the last commit time and it's 2 years ago. So you know most likely the project has gone stale, or you're not going to see any new features, or there's perhaps going to be a breaking change as operating systems and Docker and other components get updated if the solution is not updated in lockstep with those advancements. So if you've been craving something better than the home lab solution that maybe you've been using as of recently, definitely check out CoreControl. It's your friend, and I'll put it in the show notes so that you can take a quick look with that as well. There's another tool. If you work with Docker containers in any shape, form, or fashion, you know that updating those Docker containers requires downtime. And obviously, this is what pushes many to look to something like Kubernetes or maybe Docker Swarm if they want that middle ground between the standalone host before having to go all the way to Kubernetes. This Docker Rollout tool is a tool that's a CLI tool that gives you almost like a Kubernetes style stage deployment in Docker environments. So it allows you to do those rolling updates. And the key with this, I think it's ingenious at how simple it is that the tool adds pausing in there. So what it does is it spins up the new container. Once the health check has passed on the new container, traffic is flipped to that container, and then the other container is spun down. Instead of spinning down the original container, spinning up the new container, shifting traffic in that order of operations, it just makes sense. And you think and wonder, why isn't it actually this way with normal Docker Compose? Docker Rollout is extremely cool. There are a few limitations at this point. Actually, I noted the developer actually sent a comment that this was going to be a future feature that multiple containers would be able to be updated. However, at this time, it's one container at a time updates. It also requires the health checks to allow this rolling update functionality. So keep those limitations in mind. I tested it with a couple of containers I have running in my home lab, Fresh RSS, as well as Nginx Proxy Manager, and it did the job. It was really cool to see those things rolling update and spin up the new containers before swapping that traffic over, spinning down the original container. Again, if you're a little bit uneasy to use Docker Compose up-d, especially in semi-production environments or your home lab, this is a tool that adds those guardrails that allow you to do those rolling updates without the weight and complexity and challenges that come along with Kubernetes. Very, very cool tool there. And the final tool we want to highlight is something called ProxMenux. And I just released a video covering the full functionality of ProxMenux. Really, really cool solution. And the best way that I can describe it is that it's almost like a diet pie type solution for Proxmox. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's almost like a full-blown menu system that allows you to navigate various menus to carry out rather complex command line CLI commands in Proxmox, things like disk pass-through, GPU pass-through. It even has some really neat features in there that allow you to automatically deploy things like a NAS operating system or Windows OS or Linux, or even Mac OS is one of the options when you go to deploy the automated templates with ProxMenux. So long story short, it's like a CLI menu tool that wraps around native CLI tools, but it's also more than just native tools. It actually grabs various helpful things from community repositories such as the Proxmox helper scripts repository. And there's a dedicated menu with ProxMenux that allows you to tap into the scripts that are provided in that Proxmox helper scripts repository and actually run those very simply and easily without having to curl and feed those commands into a bash script. All of that done in an automatic way through the menu-driven system. Again, I will link to the project, and in the show notes, again, I will link to the project repository where you can see the official notes, download the project, as well as the YouTube video that I just released on ProxMenux. I think it's a really fantastic tool that if you're getting into Proxmox or you feel like a novice with Proxmox, it's one of those tools that is kind of a no-brainer. It helps you to wrap your mind around Proxmox, see what is capable with some of the command line commands as well as some of the community repositories without having to go through the trouble and the hurdles of doing all of these things manually. And if you're like me, you learn by looking at some of these tools what they can do, what the functionality they contain is, and it kind of gives you insight into what you can do on your own or in a manual way in something like Proxmox. So very, very cool tool that I think you will benefit from when you take a look at it, run it in your home lab, see what it's all about. Also, in case you've missed some of the bonus home lab projects and mini PCs that I've had my hands on lately, if you missed my review on the Geekum A5 2025 edition, this thing was a powerhouse, an absolute powerhouse Ryzen mini PC that totally shocked me at how efficient this little mini PC was. And I'm talking on the magnitude of 4 watts at idle in Proxmox. That is astounding, and very good thermals and power efficiency as well at 100% CPU. So definitely check out my review of that. Also, just a few other call outs I want to make you aware of just to check out. Also, just a few other callouts I want to make you aware of. If you want to check out my written posts about these components, if you want to check out my written posts about these solutions. Also, I've checked out a Swiss Army knife type tool for self-hosted utilities, and this thing is called OmniTools. Also, I had never had my hands on a CI/CD solution called TeamCity, and actually recently worked on a project where TeamCity was used. So I kind of got my first exposure to TeamCity CI/CD, so definitely check out my piece on that one. And finally, I looked at a tool called kubesolo, and definitely check this one out. It's a new Kubernetes Edge distribution by Portainer, and interestingly, it is intentionally stripped of its clustering capabilities, and that was done for a very specific reason. And kubesolo actually has a lower memory footprint than something like K3s or K0s. So definitely check that utility and that tool out. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed the latest news that we've discussed, the tools and solutions that really take our home labs to the next level. And awesomely, all of the ones that we discussed today are open source, community driven projects. Well, if you're enjoying the show, please hit subscribe on the podcast, share with a friend, and leave a review. And of course, all details, screenshots, and links I've got up on my blog at Virtualization How To. Also check out my Substack and of course the YouTube channel. Well, thanks for joining me. Keep building, keep experimenting, and I'll catch you between the clouds.